नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। Hare Krishna. So today we are reading from the Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavatam's 10th canto, the Ashraya Tattva, chapter number 2, prayers by the demigods, and we are reading the 29th and the 30th shloka. So this is the famous section of Garbha Stuti, where the demigods are praying to the newly appeared Lord Krishna from the womb of Devaki. So we'll read the 29th shloka and we will discuss more elaborately the 30th one. So the 29th is not on the board, so I will just recite. Bibharshi rupani avyabodha atma shemaya lokasya characharasya satvopapannani sukhavahani Satam bhadrani muhukalanam. The translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O Lord, you are always in full knowledge, and to bring all good fortune to all living entities, you appear in different incarnations, all of them transcendental to the material creation. When you appear in these incarnations, you are pleasing to the pious and religious devotees, but for non-devotees, you are the annihilator. That's the translation, the purport. This verse explains why the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears as an incarnation again and again. The incarnations of the Supreme Personality of Godhead all function differently, but their main purpose is paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkritam, to protect the devotees and annihilate the miscreants. Yet, even though the dushkritis or miscreants are annihilated, this is ultimately good for them. So that was the 29th shloka, and now we are reading the 30th shloka, which is there on the board. Tvai ambujaksha khila satvadhamni Tvai ambujaksha khila satvadhamni Samadhi naveshita chetasaike Samadhi naveshita chetasaike Tvatpadapotena mahatkritena Tvatpadapotena mahatkritena Kurvanti govatsapadam bhavabdim Kurvanti govatsapadam bhavabdim. Word to word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Tvai, in you, Ambuja Aksha, O lotus-eyed Lord, Akhila Satvadhamni, who are the original cause of all existence, from whom everything emanates, and in whom all potencies reside. Samadhina, by constant meditation and complete absorption in thoughts of you, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Aveshita, fully absorbed, fully engaged. Chetasa, but by such a mentality. Eke, the one process of always thinking of your lotus feet. Tvat padapotena, by boarding such a boat as your lotus feet. Mahat kritena, by that action which is considered the most powerful original existence, or which is executed by Mahajanas. Kurvanti, they make. Govatsa padam, like the hoof print of a calf. Bhavabdhim, the great ocean of Nishans. Translation: O lotus-eyed Lord, by concentrating one's meditation on your lotus feet, which are the reservoir of all existence, and by accepting those lotus feet as the boat by which to cross the ocean of Nishayans, one follows in the footsteps of Mahajanas, great saints, sages and devotees. By this simple process, one can cross the ocean of Nishayans as easily as one steps over the hoof print of a calf. Purport: the true mission in life is to cross the ocean of Nishayans, of repeated birth and death. Those in the darkness of ignorance, however, do not know this mission. Instead, being carried away by the waves of material nature, prakritehe kriyamanani gunahi karmani sarvashaha, they are undergoing the tribulations of mrityu samsar vartamani, repeated birth and death. But persons who have achieved knowledge by the association of devotees follow the Mahajanas. Mahat kritena. Such a person always concentrates his mind upon the lotus feet of the Lord and executes one or more of the 9 varieties of devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. Simply by this process, one can cross the insurmountable ocean of Nishayans. Devotional service is powerful in any form. Shri Vishnu Shravane Parikshit Abhavad Vaiyasaki Kirtane. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1-265. According to this verse, Maharaj Parikshit became liberated by fully concentrating his mind on hearing the Lord's holy name, attributes and pastimes. Similarly, Shukdev Goswami simply glorified the Lord, and by speaking on the subject matters of Krishna that constitute the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, he too was liberated. One may also be liberated simply by Sakhya, friendly behavior with the Lord. Such is the power of devotional service, as we learn from the examples set by the Lord's many pure devotees: Swayambhur Naradaha Shambhu, Kumaraha Kapilo Manuhu, Prahlado Janko Bhishmo, Balir Vayasakir Vayam. We have to follow in the footsteps of such devotees, for by this one easy process, one can cross the great ocean of Nishayans, just as one might cross a small hole created by the hoof of a calf. Herein, the Lord is described as Ambujaksha, or lotus-eyed. By seeing the eyes of the Lord, which are compared to lotus flowers, one becomes so satisfied that one does not want to turn his eyes to anything else. Simply by seeing the transcendental form of the Lord, a devotee is at once fully absorbed in the Lord in his heart. This absorption is called Samadhi. Dhyana avastita tadgatena manasa pashyantiyam yoginah. A yogi is fully absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for he has no other business than to think of the Lord always within the heart. It is also said, Samashrita ye pad pallava plavam mahat padam punya yasho murarehe bhavam budhir vatsa padam param padam 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 yad vipadam natesham. For one who has accepted the boat of the lotus feet of the Lord, who is the shelter of the cosmic manifestation and is famous as Murari, the enemy of the demon Mura, The ocean of the material world is like the water contained in a calf's hoof print. His goal is Parampadam or Vaikuntha, the place where there are no material miseries, not the place where there is danger at every step. This process is recommended here by authorities like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, Swayambhur Narada Shambhu. And therefore we must take to this process in order to transcend nations. This is very easy, but we must follow in the footsteps of great personalities, and then success will be possible. In regard to the word Mahat Kritena, it is also significant that the process shown by great devotees is not only for them but also for others. If things are made easy, this affords facility for the person who has made them easy and also for others who follow the same principles. The process recommended in this verse for crossing the ocean of nescience is easy, not only for the devotee, but also for the common persons who follow the devotee. Mahajano yena katha sapantha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om agyantimirantasya jnananjana shalakaya चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवम् साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितंश्च। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्ण प्रेम प्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्ण चैतन्य नामने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So it is my great fortune to get an opportunity to speak on the Srimad Bhagavatam's 10th canto, but I feel very embarrassed because of the presence of many great souls, many senior devotees during this month of Kartik. So I seek their blessings so that I may be empowered to speak something on this verse which is being spoken by the demigods. So the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd chapter, Prayers by the Demigods, is a very famous stuti. Stuti means glorification. Series of verses composed to glorify the Supreme Lord is called as a stuti. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear of so many stutis. And this particular stuti is very famous. As it is said in English, there is a proverb, coming straight from the horse's mouth. So if something comes from an authority, coming from the horse's mouth means being spoken by some authority. So this stuti is not being spoken by anyone from the struggling devotees or the people of the material world. Of course, the demigods are from the material world, but more realized. So this stuti is spanning over some 20 verses, and in this stuti the demigods are glorifying the Supreme Lord. Garbha stuti. So definitely the demigods are very, very empowered, very, very highly realized to speak anything about the Supreme Lord. Sometimes it so happens that when we have to understand a subject, we need realizations, we need to hear the realizations of realized devotees, those who are authorities on the subject. So there are three kinds of knowledge, as I've heard. One is, Devkinandan Prabhu says this many a times, he says one is acquired knowledge, wherein we read some books and understand. That is called as acquired knowledge. And that's easy. One can sit through, study for hours and acquire some knowledge. But more than that or higher than that is realized knowledge, wherein the knowledge is practically coming after applying the knowledge. Acquiring and then applying. Applying gives us realization. So realized knowledge is not just theory, it is theory plus practical. So when one actually executes the process, then one comes to know, oh, this what was spoken is correct. That is called as realized knowledge. But even higher or sometimes even more subtle than that is revealed knowledge. Knowledge which is revealed by the Supreme Lord in the heart of a devotee. So that doesn't happen so easily because you don't have any control over the source of that knowledge. It is absolutely causeless mercy that the Lord reveals Himself. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai, Shri Shri Krishna Balram ki jai, Shri Shri Radhe Shyam Sundar ki jai. So revelation is something even more superior or higher, and it takes one to have that qualification so that the Lord reveals. So when we talk about Vedic scriptures, interestingly, many of the things are revealed by the Supreme Lord. So the demigods are speaking what they have realized, and the position of Krishna. In the previous verses, the demigods have started speaking just 4 or 5 verses before, and they'll continue speaking. So in these series of verses, they are glorifying the Supreme Lord. Now, generally any stuti does that only, glorifying the Supreme Lord in different ways. But what is interesting is that people glorify according to their viewpoint, according to their standpoint. Like, if we view the sky from this point, then it may give us a different view, whereas when we view the sky from a satellite, which is many kilometers high in the sky, the view may be different, right? We may see clouds, we may see few stars blinking, but from the satellite there may not be any clouds and the stars may be more bright. So the view is different. So why we should actually study the stutis, although sometimes it is little difficult to study, because when we read through the stutis, the glorification prayers, whether it's Kunti Maharani, whether it is Gajendra, whether it is the demigods, we can understand what is their viewpoint at that particular situation. And it really helps us when especially when we cross through those situations, it helps us understand, it helps us see the dimension in which one should actually be seeing the presence of Supreme Personality of Godhead. So with that background, we'd like to dwell on these 2 verses. So Prabhuji told me to discuss a little bit about the 29th verse also. There's a brief purport, but very interesting point in that purport, which came to my mind just as I was reading. So Prabhupada says in the 29th verse, which is not there on the board we have the 30th verse, he says, this verse explains why the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears as an incarnation again and again. The first line of the purport. This verse explains why the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears as an incarnation again and again. So the interesting thing in this is that in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear of so many great devotees because of whom the Lord appeared. we hear about the incarnation of Narsimhadev, and he appeared because of Prahlad Maharaj. So Prahlad Maharaj, as an example, was able to, by his devotional service, was able to attract the Lord to appear as Narsimhadev, right? And likewise we hear of different devotees who were able to invite the Lord to appear as different incarnations. But what is the glory of Parikshit Maharaj is that through his questions to Shukdev Goswami, he has made the Lord appear in all forms in the Srimad Bhagavatam. For a particular devotee, the Lord has appeared in one form, for another devotee in another form, but for Parikshit Maharaj, he has appeared in all forms in the Srimad Bhagavatam through his question. Therefore, in the beginning itself, it says, Varyaneshate Prashna. These questions are glorious. The answers, we are not talking about the answers, we are talking about the questions only. The questions of Parikshit Maharaj are itself glorious, and they are a subject of constant hearing again and again. It is said in the previous section. The questions itself are glorious. The answers are super glorious. So if one keeps on just hearing the questions also without having any hint of the answer, that itself is very glorious activity, as it is said before. Because through the questions of Parikshit Maharaj, the Lord is made to appear by the mouth of Shukdev Goswami. So that is one thing which I felt was very interesting about Parikshit Maharaj. Well, we are talking about the 30th verse now, and this 30th verse has a very elaborate and very devotional purport. The demigods are speaking, and it is the demigods who sometimes get eluded by Lord's illusory energy. But they are speaking something which is actually beyond the reach of demigods also. They are speaking about getting liberated from the clutches of material energy, which is very difficult. And they are telling us the process. So while reading through the translation and the purport, I was feeling that sometimes we also speak of some tall, or we speak of high philosophy, even though we do not ourselves are situated in that philosophy. So it's okay. As far as it is in line with the Shastras, it's okay. Like sometimes from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Vyasasan, we speak some very high philosophy, but ourselves we may not be able to practice it. Like the demigods are speaking of this philosophy, even though they themselves are many times conditioned by material nature. So the subject matter of today is two things. Essentially, we are going to talk about two things. One is the problem and one is the solution. The problem and the solution. There was a beautiful BTG, Back to Godhead back cover many years ago. In that, there were photos of many scientists. Those photos were grayed out, black and white photos, many scientists. And in between was the photo of Srila Prabhupada in color tone. So circling Srila Prabhupada are many different scientists, and in between is the photo of Srila Prabhupada, which is color. And the slogan written was, these all know the problems, but only he knows the solution. Many people know the problem. Many of the material scientists, many of the philosophers, they have great philosophers, Plato, Socrates, they all know the problems. Material world is this, material world is like that, but only he knows the solution. So it is very important to know the problem as well as the solution. So here in the purport, Srila Prabhupada unveils, I am using the word unveil. Why? Because I will discuss it. He unveils the solution. So, reading the translation, O lotus-eyed Lord, by concentrating one's meditation on your lotus feet, which are the reservoir of all existence, and by accepting those lotus feet as the boat by which to cross the ocean of nescience, one follows in the footsteps of Mahajanas, great saints, sages and devotees. By this simple process, one can cross the ocean of nescience as easily as one steps over the hoof print of a calf. Okay. Now, this kind of verse is not the first time we are reading in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Similar verses are found at least 3 or 4 in 3 or 4 different places across the Srimad Bhagavatam. That the material world is compared to a hoof print for a devotee who has taken shelter of the boat of dash dash dash. There are many things which are compared to the boat, and we are going to try and see through the Srimad Bhagavatam what is the subject matter. So the first point that I am going to try and discuss is, with the blessings of all the devotees, is the ocean of nescience. The word nescience or nescience, whatever, however we pronounce it, is a Latin word. It comes from ne science. Science means knowledge. Ne means not. So not knowledge or ignorance is nescience. That means ignorance, or basically andhakar, agyan. And in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra and in our Vaishnava Acharya books also, this nescience has been elaborately discussed. As predominantly it has been discussed in 5 different aspects. It is said as avidya, asmita, abhinivesh, rag and dvesh. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur also in his prayers, and some acharyas, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his Ragvartama Chandrika discusses this thing. I am not going to discuss on that, but they have elaborately, subtly tried to discuss this ocean of nescience. What I am going to discuss is very simply how it affects us, or what is it for us. Prabhupada says in a purport, a beautiful line. He says this, that all knowledge not engaged in Krishna service is nescience. Simply spoken, anything that is not engaged in Krishna service is nescience. Very blanket, very, a clear-cut demarcation. This is nescience and this is knowledge. So anything, in the material world we see so many different types of knowledges, right? Like if we've been to the university, we see so many different streams, so many branches. The famous example of Prabhupada going to MIT, where he saw so many different departments, but he asked rather that where is the department that helps one overcome the subject matter of birth, old age, disease and death. And then there was no department. So Prabhupada would say all these are big, big zeros. They are big, big nescience. Because they are knowledge. But because they do not help us engage in the service of the Lord, it is called as nescience or ignorance. Okay, so that is one of the most basic definition of nescience. And this nescience, in another place, it is discussed as that which is behind the personality of Godhead. We hear of the famous comparison, Krishna Surya Sama Maya Hai Andhakar. Jahan Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Radhikar. So wherever Krishna is there is light. Just like the sun is there and there is light. But when the sun is not there, or where there is darkness, there is ignorance. So Krishna is compared to the sun, sunlight, and Maya is compared to ignorance or darkness. So that is nescience. So in the material world, one of the predominant thing that covers the living entity is nescience. So the question may be, since when the living entity has fallen into this nescience? Kab se? Since when? So Bhakti Vinod Thakur writes this in his very beautiful song. He says, Anadi karma phale padi bhavarnava jale tari bare na dekhi upay. He tells us that this is Anadi. The living entity falls into this ocean of nescience from Anadi Kal. That date is not available. It is from eternity, from the beginning, whenever that was. Anadi karma phale padi bhavarnava jale. Why is this ocean of nescience compared to, why is this nescience compared to water? Why is it compared to ocean? You know, that's a point to think. Why is it an ocean? Actually, the ocean word comes in many different aspects also. We will see one more aspect. So, the material world, the whole material creation is actually in the Garbhodak Sagar, right? The material creation is made in the water which is emanating from the pores of Mahavishnu, which is water. And the whole material world is separated by a river called as Vaitarni. So the spiritual world, material world are separated by a Vaitarni river, which is again water. So therefore, the material nescience or the material world is compared to an ocean. Now it could be compared to river, it could be compared to a lake, but it is compared to an ocean. Because ocean has unlimited depth and ocean has unlimited breadth. So material nescience has unlimited breadth. Srila Prabhupada says in one beautiful statement that the materialist people are widening the ocean. This materialistic people, what are they doing, by their research and invention? They are widening the ocean of material nescience. On one hand, the materialists are widening, and in today's verse, the spiritualists are narrowing the ocean. So this constant stretch and contraction process is going on. The devotees are trying to narrow the ocean and the materialists are trying to widen the ocean. So this is one interesting aspect, and narrowing to such an extent that the ocean becomes water which is sufficient to fill a hoof print of a calf, not even a cow, a calf hoof print. So we all have seen a calf, and a calf hoof print is very negligible. Even a child can cross over it. The comparison of calf hoof print is given, and as Srila Prabhupada says in another famous verse, Brahmaji quotes this: Samashrita ye pad pallava plavam mahat padam punya yasho murare bhavam budhir vatsa padam. This material ocean becomes like vatsa padam, like the hole created by the hoof print of a calf, which is hardly 2 inches if you go to measure, and that water is actually negligible. So the material ocean becomes like that. But when? That is very important. When does the material ocean, which is ever expanding, becomes like this, like the water contained in a hoof print of a calf? So that is the solution aspect when we will discuss. While we are talking about the ocean, let me also bring out one analogy from the Nectar of Devotion. In the Nectar of Devotion introduction, Srila Prabhupada says that like there is a material ocean of nescience, there is a spiritual ocean of bliss as well. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that is also Sindhu, that is also an ocean. So here is a material ocean, here is a spiritual ocean. Okay, here is the ocean of nescience, ignorance, here is the ocean of bliss, devotion. And in this ocean there are sharks. There are big sharks, Timingalas, who are ready to devour. And likewise, what are those sharks? Those sharks are the fake pseudo gurus who are behind wealth, fame and beauty, Prabhupada says. So these sharks, they can devour any person who is trying to swim across the ocean. There are 3 things which are possible in this ocean. You sail through, you swim through, or you sink through. You can sail, swim or sink. Most of the people in the material world are planning very royally to sink inside. But then there are some who are trying to swim through. So when a person tries to swim through, then what happens? The sharks devour. So he gets caught up by these fake pseudo gurus who just perform some kinds of austerity, but actually their goal is to get name, fame, prestige, or they are in some or the other form they want the nescience to continue. Either it is beauty or either it is wealth, fame, prestige, etc., etc. So having been devoured by such sharks, the person is not able to continue his journey, he is not able to swim through. That life is finished. So in the material world there are many sharks like this. So therefore swimming is not recommended in this ocean. Don't swim. So then one has to only sail through. Sailing is easy. Like this ocean, continuing and completing the analogy, like in this ocean there are sharks. Similarly, in this ocean there are sharks too. And who are the sharks in this ocean of material spiritual bliss? They are the stalwart devotees who are relishing in the depth of this spiritual ocean. The sharks generally do not come on the surface. The whales, the Timingalas. Actually, the Timingalas are much more superior to the sharks, because sharks can devour small fish, but Timingalas can devour sharks. So these devotees are like those big Timingalas who are blissfully situated in the depths of this spiritual bliss ocean. So what we are trying to do is actually to jump across from this ocean into that ocean. We want to dive from this ocean into that ocean, the spiritual bliss ocean. So the devotees and acharyas are compared to the sharks in this great ocean. Okay. So then now, having understood the problem to some extent, we would like to understand the solution as well. What can we do about this? So now in the scriptures in the Srimad Bhagavatam, we have several different analogies. I'll try to succinctly summarize them. One understanding is that, or one solution is that, different solutions have been prescribed. The Vedas, the scriptures, the message, the knowledge, the instructions given by the Lord is compared to a bridge. On which is built up on the top of the ocean. But the bridge has its own challenges. If we try to, someone may question, why should I sail through? I will walk. I will go walking on the bridge. Although it is impractical for one to walk over the bridge and cross the ocean. But still, if someone says, I will walk through, then the challenge is that the path is very tedious. The Vedic scriptures are very tedious to understand, and they have different purports, different meanings. So the path itself is very tedious, and secondly, one does not get any support or facility. It is fully dependent on his own endeavor. Whereas the beauty in the sailing process, taking the boat process, the beauty is that there are favorable winds. The favorable winds can push the boat even if the boat is just idly floating on the surface of the water, right? So we hear of the famous shloka, the Guru Karna Dharam shloka, in which the comparison is given that the human body is like a boat. One beautiful statement I read, so that is the take-away statement of today's discussion. The human body is like a boat which can help one to cross over the ocean of nescience, and the body is the boat, and the bodily conception is the ocean of nescience. Not very far. The body is the boat, and the bodily conception is the ocean of nescience. So Prabhupada says this. So this human body is like the boat in which one can cross. The instructions of the spiritual master or the spiritual master, the presence of the spiritual master is like a very expert captain leading or sitting on the boat. So that facility is not there in the bridge. You need a captain, and you have a very expert captain who knows the way, who knows the technique to sail the boat. And the instructions of Krishna or the scriptures are like the favorable breeze. So all put together, the journey through the boat is easy. So therefore the boat process is recommended. While on boat, yesterday or day before, I got an opportunity to cross the Yamuna river with the help of a boat. We hear of the famous example which Srila Prabhupada gives of the marriage party who was wanting to sail through the Yamuna they wanted to go for a marriage party, and in the night they all sat on the boat, and I think they were going to somewhere, Agra or maybe wherever. So then everyone sat in the boat, and the boat was loaded with whatever, and there was an expert captain also, a rower, a boatsman. But morning when they woke up, they found themselves still there in Vrindavan. They had not reached their destination. So after spending the whole night, after rowing through the waters of Yamuna whole night, the boat didn't go anywhere. Why? What was the reason? What did Srila Prabhupada say? Because the boat was anchored at the ghat. Because there was a strong anchor which had held the boat, and therefore the boat couldn't move. So likewise, in our life, sometimes we may get this boat, we may get favorable breeze, we may get a captain also. Everything may be well situated, ready to sail, but we may end up actually being there itself if that anchor is not removed. And that anchor is the anchor of the living entity's desires for sense gratification. As long as that anchor is first not pulled out, the boat will not move ahead. Instead, it will just cause endeavor. Whole night the boatsman will keep on moving. We may keep on moving, but what will happen at the end is that we'll still continue to remain where we are if that anchor is not lifted. Now, to lift that anchor is not easy job. Every one of us knows, those who have been practicing for months and years, we know that lifting that anchor of sense gratification is not an easy job. If it was so easy, then we wouldn't be spending so much time and energy discussing this. So it's not an easy job, but it becomes easy especially in Kali Yuga when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu arrives. Although it is not an easy job, understood, but it specially becomes easy by the appearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And how does that go? So in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, this beautiful 2 shlokas come. It says, Krishna kahe ama bhaje mage vishay sukh. When Krishna is dealing with his devotees, he is personally dealing. He does not employ any of his energy in dealing with his devotees. So Krishna is personally dealing with his devotees. So he says, when he sees a struggling devotee who is chanting Hare Krishna, then he looks for sense gratification. Chants Hare Krishna, looks for sense gratification. So Krishna says, Ama bhaje mage vishay sukh. He is chanting my names, but then he is asking for sense gratification. Amrit chhadi vish mage, ei bada murkh. So the dilemma for Krishna, who is standing on the altar, is that what should I give him? While he is saying that he wants me, but actually he wants Vishay Sukh. Vishay means the sense gratification that living entity is behind. So he is saying, Amrit chhadi vish mage, ei bada murkh. Very crazy person. But although the living entity is fool, I am not fool. Ami vigya, ei murkha, vishay kena diba. While the living entity is fool, I am not. So I should give him something that is for his ultimate benefit. What does Krishna give? Swa charanamrita diya vishay bhulaiba. That's the end. Give the nectar of Lord's lotus feet, and the vishay, the hankering for sense gratification, is vanished. It's no more there. So the struggle can become the hoof print of a calf, the water contained in the hoof print of a calf, when Swa Charanamrita Diya happens. When the lotus feet of Lord becomes our subject of meditation. So I was thinking actually to discuss about the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Actually, we should become foot specialist. There are heart specialists, there are brain specialists, but devotees should be foot specialist. He should be a foot specialist of Lord Krishna. He should have pakka knowledge, ekdam clear that this is lotus feet of Lord Krishna. As a small test, probably each one of us can think how many signs are there on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. Probably we may have to go and check back. We may not be able to instantly think of, how many. So the right foot has 11 and the left foot has 8. And these signs, all those signs, the symbols, that should be the object of our meditation, the lotus feet itself. Because when we are talking about meditating and concentrating, as comes in the shloka translation, by concentrating one's meditation on your lotus feet. So how can that happen? When we at least have study of the lotus feet. See what happens when you meditate on some object. For example, if you have been meditating on a latest iPhone, suppose, then you automatically dwell on it and you come to know what are the features, how sleek it is. Oh, I'm so sorry. iPhone. So then we come to know of the different features. Oh, it looks like this, it has this feature, that feature, etc. Right? So meditation brings in more knowledge. It gives us more clear picture. So likewise, when we meditate on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, it will not be hazy. It will be very clear, crystal clear. Every day our meditation will be on lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So we'll be able to see that the lotus feet has these footprints. It is pinkish in color. The dimension is like this. Like one painting which was made, and Krishna was lifting Govardhan hill, and the Mataji who had painted, she had made Krishna with biceps. Because Krishna is lifting Govardhan hill, so definitely he must be having biceps, big biceps. So then when Srila Prabhupada saw that picture, he said, this is rubbish. Krishna doesn't have biceps like this. He's not a six-pack bodybuilder. He's a simple cowherd boy. So you have to paint him like that. But how is he lifting the Govardhan hill? That is inconceivable. So this kind of clarity, and Srila Prabhupada had such a clarity. In fact, I was talking to one devotee, he was saying that the paintings of ISKCON, the BBT paintings, are exactly the windows to the spiritual world. Please do not misunderstand that they are just some ordinary paintings. They are windows to the spiritual world. When Srila Prabhupada would give instructions, as I could read through many of these instructions given to painters, you can specifically go and read the letters which are written to artists and painters. Srila Prabhupada was absolutely very particular how Krishna looks. So it was not like, okay, this is also okay, okay, that is also okay, both look good. No. In one painting, Srila Prabhupada, one Mataji had made lot of hair, and the hair was like only this much. Krishna has curly hair, but which flows below. But this hair was only up to here. So Srila Prabhupada said, what is this painting? Krishna is not a hippie. Krishna is not a hippie. So that you are just giving him hair only like this, yo. He has a good flow of hair which is coming down and beautiful hair. So this meditation is possible through our paintings of ISKCON, the BBT paintings. So when we see at Krishna's lotus feet, of course there are many pictures which are made from the Shastras, based on the Shastras, which are available on the internet when you search for lotus feet of Krishna. But you come to see different signs on the lotus feet, different symbols. In these symbols, signs, they indicate many things. I will just discuss 2 or 3, although there are 19 such signs, but I'll just discuss 2 or 3 because the time is up, and because the subject is of meditation of lotus feet. So likewise in Radharani's lotus feet also there are 19 signs, and same way in Krishna's lotus feet also. However, in the lotus feet of Nityanand Prabhu there are 24 signs, 12 on each foot. So let us discuss couple of them. Like one of the sign which is there on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna is okay. So one of the sign is that of a fish. So why there is a fish on the lotus feet of Krishna? Because the fish is very fickle. It is never steady, right? So the mind is also very fickle, resembled by the fish in the lotus feet of Krishna. So by meditating on Krishna's lotus feet, our mind will become peaceful. So that is the indication why Krishna has fish on his lotus feet. Okay. And fish resembles it is the sign of Cupid's flag. On Cupid's flag there is fish. So fish generally resembles too much hankering for lust. As one example is also given of the 5 different senses which are caught by the 5 different animals, we hear that. So the fish generally resembles lusty desires. So when we meditate on Krishna's lotus feet, what will happen? Our lust will gradually subside. Okay. Then there is a barley corn. In Hindi we call it jaw. So there is barley corn on Krishna's lotus feet. What does that indicate? It indicates that the devotees who serve Krishna's lotus feet, Radha Shyam Sundar's lotus feet, they will get all opulences, because the barley corn represents freshness and opulence. So one who is serving Krishna's lotus feet will not be deprived, he will get it. As we see in so many stories of Krishna's devotees like Dhruv Maharaj, then they got all the opulences, even more than they deserved or desired. Then we see there is a sign of a disc, Sudarshan Chakra, Ari. So that indicates that one who meditates on Krishna's lotus feet, the 6 enemies, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, Mad, Matsarya, lust, anger, greed, pride, all these enemies will be smashed or will be cut by this disc which is there on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. So these all will be vanished. Then we see there is a Urdhva Rekha. There is a line which is ascending upwards. From the middle, it goes to the point below the toe. So that Urdhva Rekha means that one who meditates on Lord's lotus feet, he will rise to the spiritual world. He won't stay in the material world just by meditating. And And likewise, there is a Padma, a lotus, which indicates that one who meditates on the lotus feet of Krishna, he will get all opulences, he will become a wonderful devotee, and he will finally attain the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna. So, like that, there are many other signs, and they all have their meanings. But the point over here, which is being said by the demigods, is that if one can situate himself on the boat of Lord's lotus feet, then the material ocean becomes like a puddle, a tiny puddle which is just so much as which holds only so much water as the hoof print of a calf. So it's a very easy process. At the same time, it is a difficult one also. Only if we can meditate, we can make it a practice in our day-to-day life to meditate on the lotus feet of Lord. Then we can be rest assured to be situated in the transcendental boat, which is being led by a competent captain, which is being sailed with the help of favorable breeze, and definitely we will be able to cross over the ocean of material birth and death. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवत महापुराण की. Any comments?
Thank you so much for such a wonderful class. So inspiring. Thank you. I wanna ask, like, if it's possible, you tell me from where you are quoting these purports of the scenes of the Lotus Feet, because I wanna read everything. If it's not possible, maybe you can tell us the other purports, or if it's not so much time, maybe you can send me from where you are quoting, and I can insert. Because also I like to write about read about the things.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes. So the following descriptions I am reading come from Skand Puran, Matsya Puran, Garga Samhita, Sarartha Darshani of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Anand Chandrika of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Roop Chintamani of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Shri Jiv Goswami's Kar Pad Yugal Samharti. There are many books which have been compiled into this one document, which is there on the internet. I have just taken it from there. But I'll share it with you. Yes, bro. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवत महापुराण की, श्रील प्रभुपाद की.